Welcome to this episode of our program Arab Affairs. As usual, we will be discussing an Arab file. Today we'll be speaking about Lebanon and the second international conference for the support of Lebanon, which was called by France and the United Nations, was held last week, and it was held via video conference to rally support for the financially or the economically strapped country. President Sisi participated in this conference and underlined the importance of the support of the international community to Lebanon, particularly at this very critical stage, and urged all the Lebanese leaders to put aside their differences and place the country's higher interest above any other considerations. We'll be speaking about this conference, we'll be speaking about the developments in Lebanon, particularly on the ground. What is Lebanon to see at this very particular upcoming stage? We'll be speaking about that and more in our episode later on. Before we delve into our discussion, let's first have a quick look on the Arab news that took place during this week, and we'll come back for more discussion.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met on Monday with visiting Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. During the talks, President el-Sisi said that the Palestinian cause will remain a priority in Egypt's foreign policy, adding that Egypt has a constant stance and is fully supportive of Palestinian choices towards peaceful political settlements for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. President Sisi also stressed that Egypt continues efforts to ensure that Palestinians restore their rights as stipulated under relevant international resolutions. He noted that Egypt's efforts aim at maintaining Palestinian stability and security. Sisi also said that Arab efforts must continue to resume Palestinian-Israeli peace talks. For his part, Abbas expressed appreciation for Egypt's efforts and its constant historical stances in support of Palestinian cause. Abbas said he is keen on consultations with President Sisi on developments in Palestinian cause. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry held talks with his Saudi counterpart in the Saudi capital Riyadh on Tuesday. The talks tackled means to enhance bilateral ties in various domains, in addition to a number of regional issues of mutual concern, including the Arab solidarity as well as security threats to Cairo and Riyadh. Shoukry is heading a political deliberation committee, a part of the comprehensive dialogue over growing challenges in the region. According to a foreign ministry statement, discussions are focusing on developments in international files of mutual concern. Egypt, Greece and Cyprus continue the joint military exercise Medusa 10 in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Egypt. The joint naval and air exercise will last for several days. France and the United Arab Emirates also take part in the exercise. Air and naval forces from USA, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Sudan, Jordan, Italy and Germany will attend as observers. The exercise comes within the framework of developing and enhancing military cooperation, as well as exchanging expertise between the Egyptian armed forces and the armed forces of friendly and brotherly countries. Rivals from war-torn Libya concluded a new round of talks in Morocco as part of stepped-up efforts to bring an end to a decade of conflict. The 2 days of talks in the northern port city of Tangier brings together 13 representatives, each from Libya's House of Representatives and Supreme State Council. Last week, also in Tangier, more than 120 Libyan deputies pledged to end the divisions in this country, starting by convening the elected parliament as soon as they return home. That came after a UN-sponsored political dialogue forum in Tunis in mid-November, where participants agreed to hold elections on December 24, 2021, but not on who will lead the transition. Moving on to Yemen, Houthi rebel shelling of government-held districts of Yemen has killed 7 children over the past 2 days. In Yemen's third largest city, Taiz, 2 young girls, one just 9 months old, were pronounced dead after a rebel bombardment that also wounded 7 other people. There was no immediate reaction from the rebels, who have repeatedly played up the high civilian death toll from airstrikes by a Saudi-led coalition that has been supporting the government. A total of 74 civilians were killed or wounded in Hodeida province in October as hostilities escalated.
Right, welcome back. And to highlight the situation on the ground in Lebanon, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador Bayoumi. Hello? Hello?
Aywa?
Yes, we are on air, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, and
Yes, how are you? Okay.
I'm fine, thank you so much. And we're speaking about the second international conference on Lebanon that was held last week. And President Sisi has participated in this conference, as well as a number of world leaders and world bodies. First, the timing of this conference and how important it is from your point of view.
The timing is so important. It's very important every minute because Lebanon is in real trouble, security-wise, financially, and economically. And we are keen, of course, because Lebanon is a very dear part to Egypt and to the Arab world in general. Lebanese are very active people everywhere in the world. We are proud of them. But I am afraid that the performance in their own country is not what we hope. Differences between tribes, differences between different parties is obvious now. Also, the financial situation is very bad. That's why we are pushing the Lebanese in order to come to one voice of Lebanon, because God will help those who are helping themselves. You cannot help anybody unless he is keen to help himself. So in Lebanon, the division is very obvious between many parties and sections, and it seems that the financial background is very bad, and we are trying to send messages to them in order to make the performance, especially the economic performance, much better, because nobody will have the courage to put his money in a country where you are nowhere financially. And really, we have to help our brothers in Lebanon in order to come to one opinion which will represent the country, not the tribes, not the parties or individuals. And it's not an easy task. That's why Egypt has a very big duty to be done. I am afraid to say something very frank, that Lebanon in the last century was in a good situation whenever a big power from the area is dominating the situation there, such as the interference of the Syrian army for some time, such as during Muhammad Ali Pasha and Ibrahim Pasha, the Egyptian army went there to make everybody obey the law. But now everybody is trying to militarize his efforts, and here the danger on the Lebanese, especially that they are in a very bad situation economically, and this is reflecting itself on the political problem.
Yes.
They are trying to have a deal with Israel concerning their economic zone and the economic border in the Mediterranean, and this needs our help and our support and our experience. Many files are open in Lebanon. That's why really I appreciate the call from our president to the Lebanese in order to come forward for their country and to forget about the tribes and the parties.
Yes, Ambassador Bayoumi, you pinpointed your finger on very important points. We'll speak about each one altogether. But let me take your reading to two important messages the President has sent through his through his statement or through his participation in this conference. The first was that the international community should be standing by the Lebanese people at this critical stage. So this is an urge and a call to the international community to support the Lebanese people. Second, as you said respectively, he urged the Lebanese leaders to put aside their differences and look for the higher or the highest interests of their own country. Let me take your reading to the two messages the President here sent to the international community at large and to the Lebanese people on the other hand.
Of course, Egypt and many parties in the area, especially the Arab world, are keen to help Lebanon. But unfortunately, the worst thing which can hit a country, that each party is depending on a foreign force. So those who are going to solve the problem, not the Lebanese, but those who are foreigners and different interests from here and there. So we are calling for the Lebanese nationality in order to come forward to save their own country. Here comes the call from our president and from the Arab world for the Lebanese. Don't depend on foreign forces or foreign countries to solve your problem. You have to come to a sort of a deal between the different Lebanese parties and forces, and come to us. We shall help you. Egypt is there. The Arab League is there. I think the Arab countries of the Gulf are ready there because they are investing a lot in Lebanon. So it's not an easy task anyway.
Yes, Ambassador Bayoumi, I don't know if we have the time before the Adhan, but I want you to stay with me here until we get back for the Adhan. I think we have like 1 minute, so if we have a break, then we'll continue after the Adhan. But let me here pinpoint at a very particular issue we're speaking about, differences between the Lebanese parties. And unfortunately, since Syria agreed to get out of Lebanon, and the situation in Lebanon had been in a chaotic scene. We're speaking about different parties, and each party on the ground has its own strength or is trying to emphasize its own strength. I'll take your answer, but we'll go first to the Adhan.
Okay.
Right, welcome back, and back to Ambassador Bayoumi. And as I said, that the situation in Lebanon is very complicated. We are seeing, ever since the Syrian country has agreed, or the Syrian state agreed to get out of Lebanon, and the situation has been in a very chaotic or very chaotic developments it has seen. Also, we're speaking here about different parties who are trying to prove their own strength on the ground. How is this reflecting on the Lebanese developments and the Lebanese scene? Ambassador Bayoumi.
We used to look to the Lebanese as a very wise nation, although they are different parties and tribes, but they succeed all the time, even during the civil war, in order to give each party a good role in ruling their own country. Now, I don't know. I am not sure, because also we are not lucky that Syria is not in good condition also, because the Syrian impact on Lebanon was always positive in order to maintain order in the street and order in general and security. Egypt has its role previously. But now the problem, I don't know, that nobody is keen now to come forward and to give up something of his interest in order to keep the interest of the whole nation. It is, as you rightly said, it is a little bit more complicated than we know, but we have to maintain the dialogue. As long as the dialogue is going on, I think there is a chance in order to come to reason and in order to come again to a sort of a unity. Then we shall face the real trouble, that the country is facing a huge economic problem. It seems that they lack finance, and it was not well managed, the Lebanese economy and the Lebanese finance, that banks are not in a good condition, even concerning their customers, in order to make sure that all the money is in safe. So we have to face all these problems. It's very complicated, but I think Lebanon, as a wise nation, if with the help of the Arab countries such as Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, and others, we can also bring them to security stability, which is the main door for economic stability.
Let's take it from another side. And what is really complicating the situation in Lebanon is, yes, the financial problems, which has reflected on Lebanon and affected the Lebanese developments, particularly after what happened recently in the dramatic events that took place in the explosion and all this. But also we're speaking about a core problem, which is strong parties on the ground, strong parties who refuse to put aside their weapons or to invite a show of power in order to have their own or emphasize their own strength. And at the same time, the existence of a vacuum, a government who cannot really take real decisions, at the backdrop of the existence of such parties or different parties who are all fighting for power. How far would this be very much reflecting on the stability, sovereignty, and security of Lebanon? How far do we need to emphasize the reality or the real problems so that the Lebanese people themselves can really see or shape their own future, but peacefully?
In my opinion, this is another dimension which is complicating the situation much more. That there are certain powers who are acting as if they are a state within the state. So the state voice and the state power is diminishing. We cannot impose the role of the state or the Lebanese National Army, because there are several armies on the ground. And if you visit Beirut, I am visiting Beirut very often, but not recently. But I know that there are different parties of tribes who are heavily armed, and this is not healthy at all for a country to manage its own security. I am afraid to say that maybe if we cannot solve this, either the solution is either that all those who are armed in the Lebanese situation to give up their power, or at least a part of it, or we have to impose power coming from out of Lebanon, which we do not know to whom it will be belonging. Is it some forces from the Arab League? Is it some forces from Syria? Syria is not free to do this now. Is it Egypt? Is it Saudi Arabia? We don't know. So if the Lebanese are not ready to give in to each other and to accept the full power of the government, national government, so the only solution, like the history is telling us, that to impose foreign power on everybody and to make Lebanon come back to safe haven security-wise, then we can restore the economic situation to its better position.
Ambassador Bayoumi, when we're speaking about foreign powers, are we speaking about Arab ones, or are we speaking about the interference and what we have seen of the French interference? France called for this, and the United Nations definitely.
When I talk about foreign power, I mean Arab power.
Yes.
Because Arabs are keen, of course, to keep the Lebanese freedom. Now we have another candidature because the president of France came once, and now he's ready to come again and again. And it seems that France has a very high voice in the situation. Shall we be in need to accept French interference? God, my God, this will be more and more complication in the situation. And I hope that this, what we are talking about, will encourage all the Lebanese parties in order to solve the problem on Lebanese parties, not from a foreign power, especially foreign power out of the Arab world.
Yes.
Because no country in the Arab world has interest to have Lebanon, a weak Lebanon. We are trying to help this very dear country to us, and interference from outside the Arab world is very dangerous. I hope the Lebanese are in a good position to understand what you're talking about.
Yes. Since we brought up France, then we're seeing in this upcoming days, just a few days, an important trip the President Fattah al-Sisi will carry out with. He will be starting with France and then after that to Belgium. It's a European tour. How far do you see the importance of such visit? Particularly, we're speaking here about that the President is carrying with him a portfolio of African and Arab problems.
Yes, we are here depending on the side of one of our foreign affairs policies, which is the Euro-Mediterranean policy. And of course, it is engaging the whole 27 European countries with the 8 Arab countries. And we were really building a sort of an Arab South Mediterranean unity. We call it Agadir. It is Jordan, Egypt, Tunisia, and Morocco. And we were working on engaging Lebanon and Syria and Algeria also in this process. And maybe it's good that you are mentioning this, that we can help ourselves by imposing a sort of cooperation between the Arab Mediterranean countries and the European countries also, in order to help the situation for better position.
Yes,
mind you that we have this agreement, the association agreement, between all the Arab countries on the Mediterranean with the European Union in order to maintain peace, security, to combat the organized crime also, terrorism is our enemy, all of us. Drug trafficking, illegal migration, all these crimes, we are against it with the help of the European Union.
Yes.
Maybe it is a good idea to ask the help of the European Union.
Actually, Ambassador Bayoumi. Yes, actually, Ambassador Bayoumi, I was pinpointing or highlighting the upcoming visit of President Sisi to France while having two portfolios with him, one African and one Arab. So,
yes, in meetings like that on what we call the presidential level, anything which comes to your mind, it is on the table, of course. I am quite sure that our president and the president of France will discuss the Syrian problem, the Iraqi problem, the Libyan problem, and all and above the Lebanese problem, because, of course, France also has large interest and deep interest in Lebanon. Egypt is the same. And maybe let us hope that we can come to a sort of common understanding between Egypt and France, which we can market it to the Arab world and to the Lebanese themselves, and to come with some good proposals to bring all of them to the negotiation table in order to save Lebanon from this very bad situation.
Yes, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister, thank you so much for being with us over the phone. And before we end our episode here, let's take this report on this, or the second international conference for the support of Lebanon. Next week, we'll see you with another important Arab topic.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi participated in the second international conference to support Lebanon via video conference. During his speech in the conference, President el-Sisi stressed the importance of the international community's support to the Lebanese people in these difficult circumstances. The president also called on the Lebanese leaders to settle disputes and form a national unity government that is able to deal with current challenges. President el-Sisi added that Egypt provided all forms of support to Lebanon immediately after the Beirut blast through air bridge of aid supplies. The president said that the conference represents a message of support to Lebanon from all friendly countries. Meanwhile, France's President Emmanuel Macron urged Lebanon politicians to form a government as he chaired a second aid conference to help the crisis-hit country after a deadly port blast. Lebanon's cabinet stepped down after the August 4th port blast that killed more than 200 people and ravaged large parts of Beirut, but efforts to form a new one have since hit a wall. Formation of a reform-minded government was the first step in a French plan towards unlocking massive financial aid to rescue the country from its worst economic crisis in decades.